So, in the past, I talked about wage stagnation, like how would you feel when things don't grow as you'd expect? But now it's time to build on that. So, what do you do to fix that? How do you try to fix that if you have any ideas? And it's time to answer that question. And how would we do that? So, you look at the actions and consequences with the top, and you say, spin the top, top spins, consequence, pretty easy cause effect relationship. But this is a little bit more complicated. So, we need to know the past has an effect on wage distribution, but what the main effect was bargaining power of workers, which impacted median workers and shrunk the size pool of them. Then to know, also on top of that, we need to know what's going on as well and just set the stage. So what happened, how do we fix it, and then where do we go from there in terms of efforts and how we exert ourselves as well. And now it's time to start with the current state of affairs. So bargaining power workers is the key issue and key factor related to the wage distribution problems. And then on top of that, the main cause of those distribution problems is current policies. You see that? And then Lawrence Marshall, a distinguished fellow at the Economic Policy Institute, really, and his colleagues identified past policies like your trade policy, industry deregulation, and other macroeconomic decisions that relate to unemployment as key contributors to the decrease in the bargaining power of workers. And the effect of that is just creating this low man wins mentality where you see just get low, and the lowness comes from costs. So you say get cheap, and firms make rational decisions on top of that because who wouldn't want cheap? But there's an exception to that, and that is big CEO, just the top of the top of the top. And that really exception comes from really David Peets, a professor at Griffith University in Australia, where he points out that in a paper about executive remuneration, where we know they're overpaid, but we don't do anything about it. So it's kind of like, who knows? We'll just chill and sit with that. And that's the big thing where we can't rock the boat with them. So they have the power, but we don't. That's why we get this little scale where we're down here, firms are up there. And we just kind of have to suck it up with like unemployment, similar deal where we just kind of have to get the short end of the stick. But now it's time to bring about who really benefited from these decisions. And Michael Covell and Aaron Pachidi, a professor at University of Southern Maine and a professor at Siena College, respectively, worked together to write a paper about this topic with bargaining power and wages, and they identified capital, and that increased benefit came at the expense of labor share, which is the returns in the economy that come back to us. So basically what we get paid in wages. So like we're getting less of a share because it's going to capital, which is just like other parties and other parts of the economy. And that really just means our slice is getting worse. So like if you want to think about like pizza, we're going from high quality to are you sure you want to eat that material? And building on that, how do we get this slicing back to where we want it to be? And that's what I found is through unionizing. So, and the effects of succeeding at that. So one big example with the little car is automotive unions. And you look at United Auto Workers, or UAW, which is a union related to the big three automakers in the US based in Detroit, Michigan. And Camilla Dominowski, a correspondent at NPR related to the automotive industry and I guess just mobility and transportation in general, really wrote a nice piece about this strike and how it benefited the workers and other people within the space, along with some of the effects it had on the broader economy. So what really happened is the most notable piece from Dominowski is the wage increases. So a minimum 25%. So what does that mean? Basically, you can get big increases in wages. And Dominowski also talked to Brandon Bell, who was a worker, part of UAW, and then on top of that, got a big raise from $20 to $35 an hour. And what he said was, I don't have to worry about the cost of living going up now because I can get paid enough to survive and I will be doing fine and I'm free of stress. And we want to be free of stress. I'm happy that he's free of stress. And that's what I want to see with everybody. So there's also some other effects. So there's other positives with like Dominowski also identifies the "you are welcome" as a little snarky like comment about the UAW and what they do. And it's really just how it changes the way other automotive companies treat their workers. So you say, UAW is doing this, so I'll give you a raise. Just kind of like quiet, please. And then that's the big, within the industry space kind of effect. And then on top of that, there's the broader scope. And then Domanowski talked to Tom Narayan, and what he said, and he's an analyst at RBC Capital, and he said, it's not gonna be all sunshine and rainbows, essentially. He described it as a headwind. So he'd say some disadvantages are kind of come to the economy as a whole, but it's manageable, it's tolerable, for lack of a better word. You can handle the business, so to speak. So then now that we know what we want to do and how we're gonna do it, where do we go from there? So that's where we go to navigating the landscape and going through the states, all 50 of them down here, and say, so why states in general? So why go for states, not the entire federal government? And that's where Laura Bucci comes in as a political science professor from St. Joseph's University, where the states have unique characteristics, and she identifies that in her paper about civil engagement and unions, where the rates of change in union membership, just changes across states, and it's not consistent, it's not flat, it's not even, it's not uniform. There's unique traits that make union membership different and unique across the states, and that's where we get to tailoring your approach to states. We say, I want my suit to fit me, so I go to a tailor. I don't go to Men's Warehouse to get a suit that I'm going to wear for 20 years. I go get something and I'm going to go have it fit me. I want something that fits me, and that's what I want to do with unions. I want the unions to fit me and my needs in my state. So on top of that, there's other organizations, and those organizations also promote community interaction, and then those interactions prompt civic engagement, which Bucci identifies within her paper as well. And then that also builds on the right organization. So what does that mean within the landscape? It's like, do they push what you want? That's where we kind of get to the crabs. Do they push what you want, or are they going to try and pull you down? And the crabs is a little silly analogy where crabs in a bucket will pull each other down to advance nobody. And that's where we get to the state versus federal. Why state? There's fewer crabs. You're doing these unnecessary parts where you say, all these other crabs are just kind of messing with us, so just get them, isolate them, and then just focus on our crab, getting it out of the bucket and pushing union, pro-workers policies. So then on top of that, you kind of got why states again? So what other parts of states make it beneficial? And why should we keep going to states for these pushes about unions? So Laura Bucci identifies exceeding requirements, going above and beyond with state legislation where you can exceed the expectations and requirements of federal legislature. So it's like the minimum wage, for example. It can be higher than the federal minimum wage. That's the type of thing we want to see with, and I want to see with union rights and labor relations in general. On top of that, Bucci identifies teacher protests as another key factor, as an example as well of the chain reaction between states where success in one leads to success in others. So you say, oh, this guy's doing good, I'll follow him, and we'll do the same thing, and we get successful, and other people follow us. And that's one part. The last part is kind of the feedback loop, and I call this the feedback loop, where you say, you sacrifice something for unions, but the sacrifice is going to be smaller because it's in state. So you'd say, small sacrifice, union backs me up in the future. So you get that little positive loop where you say, sacrifice, compensation, etc., etc. And Bucci also identifies unions as an organization that pushes financial well-being as well. So now it's time to refocus. So we know what's going on. Now it's time to zoom back out a little bit and say, so what's going on? So we want to flip the switch. I want to flip it. You can too, with bargaining power of workers, to reverse the wage distribution issues among the median workers and ourselves, just everybody as well. Now it's time to think about, so the past has been influencing the present, and we want to change the present to influence the future with our policy decisions and pushing for pro-worker, pro-union legislation within the states, which will lead to bargaining power, rebalancing and recalibration. But this is only part one. Like, unions have been built up, brought down, built up, brought down. This is just part one. So we can start with this, but it's not enough. We need to do more. I can do more. You can do more. Why not? We do more. Thank you. And then here is my keyword outline right here.